going on, everybody? And welcome back to Master Crafted. Phil, how you doing today?
I'm a little blown away, Lane. For some reason, in the past week or so, we've got a huge increase in support. So I just want to say thank you. We appreciate you guys and gals taking time out of your day to watch us ramble on about 40K, something that we're super passionate about. So Lane and I are extremely humbled by all the support and all the messages that we're getting. So it means a lot. And yeah, especially after coming back after a tournament weekend, going up to Laramie to see you, and having a nice GT, this is a good way to start my week.
Yeah, looking forward to dive back in, bring some more of this, kind of back to the basic style content that y'all really loved. So, we're just gonna stick with it. We're gonna keep releasing content that kind of fits this same format, and help you guys with what obviously you're asking for. So, what's the focus of today's tips and tricks video, Phil?
Yeah, so we're going to go over layout 2. We're just going to write down the list of recommended layouts and the combined recommended pairings for deployments. That way we can kind of give our opinions on each one of those. That way you as a player can have a resource that you could just go and say, okay, well, I'm playing layout 2 tomorrow or next week or at this tournament. Let's go over to Mastercraft and see and watch those videos again, just so I can remind myself of like what it is that I need to do on these layouts, because this one is a little unique and it's a little odd, Lane. I don't know about you, but you ready to dive right into it?
Oh, I can't wait, buddy. What deployment are we starting off with first this week?
So we're gonna start off with Tipping Point.
Okay, this I think is the most awkward of the available deployments for this layout. There's just kind of this like weird no man's land area within your own deployment zone, right there in front of your home objective. That's just such an awkward place to put any models. And unless you have scout, you really just feel like you can't put anything there because you just have to put it back behind that ruin on your home. And I don't know. I think of all, like, that's just where we need to start immediately and say, right in front of your home is just such an awkward spot. It's so exposed on Tipping Point. You really can't toe the line as you would like to try and be ready to just go take up space and reach that terrain piece that's by your opponent's natural. And so I think that's like the first thing that comes to mind when I see Tipping Point for layout 2.
No, that would be my first thing as well. Like, you are absolutely right. That is a death sentence, especially because you don't have the guarantee of going first, right? Like, there are angles here, especially with some halfway decent movement, to get up here and really attack anything that you put out in front, especially if it's relatively valuable. And there's some armies that can do that exceptionally well. The other thing that stands out to me is this middle zone right here is extremely exposed, right? Like, all of that has access for firing lanes pretty much all the way through. You can be inside this terrain and shoot out, right? Like, this is just, it's a shooting gallery. It is awful. I do not like it. It makes me very uncomfortable because it's like anything you put out there, there are multiple angles that can get after those center objectives very, very easily. And the shooting lane is literally all the way through, right? Because those two edge spots are 2-inch walls. So if you're touching those, and then that's true line of sight. So you can be seen on either side, which is extremely tough to deal with for some armies, because that means that is not a safe area for you, or you have to be off that profile completely, which is tough as well, because then you're sacrificing movement and positioning and other things. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the few where it's so insanely easy on a layout to see from literally your home objective to your opponent's home objective. Like, that's just a shooting lane straight across. Like, that is pretty rare to find layouts like that within the current mission pack. And so, like, that is one thing that I'm just like, whew, man, like, you can't just sit something on there lackadaisically. It's got to be behind that wall. It's taking up space, which honestly, like, that's one of the better places to stage even a tank, is like on that objective, kind of behind the wall, where you can just like peek out and then try and go forward potentially. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just super awkward to deploy your army a lot of the times if you have a lot of drops on this specific deployment.
Yeah. If you had an army that you think would take advantage of this layout and this deployment type well, what armies come to mind?
Anything that has lots of very, very good long-range shooting and then armies that are extremely fast that can do the terrain hopping necessary to avoid those said shooting lanes are the ones that are going to find themselves doing probably the best on this layout. Is just because it's so awkward, especially on, like we were saying, tipping point. You have to be able to make it to your opponent's natural objective, and you can't do that unless you have the speed to go from the terrain profile on your home all the way up to basically, even with the center of the board, to be behind the 2-inch ruin as well as the 5x10 down there by their natural, and kind of hide in that pocket. If you don't have the speed to get there, or a way to infiltrate there, or just Lona, I don't know, you have to have a way to get into that pocket safely, or you're going to really struggle to try to deny your opponent any primary during that game without risking just being like, well, if I don't go first, I'm just getting blown off the line because I started there, you know? I think that's probably my biggest takeaway is like long range shooting. If you run in a lot of Lancers, Repulsor Executioners, things of that nature that have just big damage guns that can shoot across the board, Guard, Tau, they do very well as long, we got 72-inch range on a fair amount of high damage weapons. You can do pretty well with that. Other than that, some fast melee armies, you can just cram into that ruin right in the middle and basically touch anything you want to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tau is definitely one of those. I think new Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights really benefit from this layout because there is so much space in the middle of the board and they can punish you all the way across it. I definitely wouldn't want to see, let's see, who else? Tau, definitely. Either of the Knights I wouldn't want to see. I wouldn't want to see like Ironstorm Space Marines or any of those stupid variants where they could just like sit in a lane, right? Like they could sit right here and just cover the entire board and the entire midfield with one unit. That is very, very annoying. And they can start in a really safe position and poke out when they absolutely needed to threaten that midboard. And they don't have to do so in any way that is like extremely difficult, right? They can just poke out and do what they need to do, which is very hard to deal with. Now, you keep saying something, Lane, and it was obvious in our last layout, but when we talk about our natural and our opponent's natural, would you say this is one of the layouts that it's like, which one is your natural and which one's your opponent's natural? Because it is a goofy one for sure. Like, which one do you think that you hold better?
So, oddly enough, I do think in tipping point specifically, I really think securing your own natural early is the way to go. In either of the other missions, securing what you would consider your opponent's natural, maybe not search and destroy, it moves far enough back, I guess, that it is kind of. But on Crucible of Battle, we'll say specifically, your ability to just keep sending units right down the bottom of the board if you are green in this scenario, and just make sure you're holding that and really try to swing and turn the board sideways to where, it's top and bottom. It's so much easier on Crucible, which we will get to. But for this one specifically, I think, especially if you're an army that has lots of shooting lanes, your ability to just kind of park a bunch of resources that can shoot very far and just keep trying to shove screens towards your opponent's home objective out into the middle, and just have all of your firepower shooting all the way across as necessary, or even across the top of the board if they need to for support. It's just such a dominant position if you can get control of it.
Yeah, that we're going to have a video about applying pressure because I think that's going to be super impactful. And for a lot of you players learning how to play 40K, right? When we talk about applying pressure, I categorize that as like positional pressure, shooting pressure, and combat pressure. So those are the three that I would like encompass the pressure that we can apply. But in this layout, we can apply pressure all three of those ways. But I will say we're going to get right into it just if we talk about where we want to deploy on this layout. But we can apply a lot of pressure here, and we can do so in a lot of different ways. So for me personally, when I talk about deployment on this layout, you're actually going to see a few trends here. I like being back in this pocket, right? I like having maybe a scouting unit right here. That way I can get up onto that natural because it is a little bit farther away and tougher to get to. I like my fire support assets to be back behind this wall. That way I can, as Lane was talking about, get up and threaten this midfield as well as threaten this, because that means that anything big coming to my natural, I can punish in a significant way. Right, so I'm looking to really, really strengthen that side because Depending on the mission, I really don't want to lose my natural. I really want to lock it down, whether that be with sticky, whether that be with lone op, because this is a layout as well as deployment that, man, I would struggle to hold that objective if I wasn't already dominantly winning without lone op and without sticky.
Yeah, it definitely is a tough one to hold. Like that objective marker is only just barely enough behind that ruin at the top to where you can like put, like a unit of rattlings for my army, for instance. I can be tucked in there to where it's pretty hard to shoot me from across that board. But it's so hard to keep enough OC on that point where I'm not on the terrain that you can't, if you do have the speed to run up, to really just be like, okay, well, I'm behind the wall and I auto see you. It can definitely be a struggle. So really trying to have the resources to screen that out, hopefully get a sticky on there like my Cadians. Okay, cool, you shot me off. I just have thrown enough screens at you that you aren't going to get something that's going to remove that sticky. Even if you shoot me off, I'm still fine. It's just one of those things where this is one of the probably most favored shooting layouts, I think, as far as deployment and actual terrain layout. This one generally just does favor shooting armies, unless you just have crazy fast melee. If you have the fast melee, you can kind of get around it, but it's definitely more of a struggle for slow melee armies.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about screening, you said it already, Lane. Like, I'm putting bodies out here if this is something my army can do, and I'm making sure that this is more than probably 4 inches away. That way they cannot, if they wipe this unit, right, they can't consolidate auto see me on this objective, right? I'm trying to keep a distance here. I'm trying to keep like these guys relatively close together so they can't pass through me and end on the other side. And if they do, I want them to be able to not fall back onto the objective or, consolidate onto the objective, because that's incredibly difficult, right? But that is one of the ways that we can protect this objective, as you said, with just some screens. That could be, your Poxwalkers or your Cadians or Ratlings or Nurglings or whatever else that you have that you can push out there. But a lot of people will make the mistake of, well, I'm just pushing it out a unit to die. No, you're pushing out a unit to make sure that you can score primary the next turn. So as long as you've made the identification that, hey, this will allow me to sustain primary, it is probably worth it, especially with our cheaper screen units.
Yeah. Really trying to like focus and deep dive that screening like idea of kind of the progression. So like for me specifically, I'm probably going to start my Ratlings. Potentially, it'll really depend. If they have things that really are fast and can scout, I'm probably actually going to start them in the aggressive pocket behind the 2-inch, and then that L where it's almost all the way up. It's past the objective, even as we're looking at that bottom objective, but they're tucked in there to where I am safe from their deployment on the green side, but I am able to, if I need to, just kind of weasel my way back and touch it. But if I get to go first, I will jail my opponent. They not only didn't get to scout, I will move up, shoot, and then my little Ratlings are going to buy me an entire turn of them not getting any closer to that objective, right? And then my next layer is probably going to be some Catachans, starting in that L behind my natural. They're going to run up. They're going to be behind it as best they can, try to hide, and say, hey, if you want to come out and shoot me across the board, that's fine, because it's going to have to be from a position that I can hit you back. But then once we're there, they're going to replace where those Ratlings were. If I don't need to fan out to screen and block movement, I'm just going to keep aggressively progressing and taking that space to where when the turn does come up that I need to screen you because I'm worried that you have the movement to stop me, then I'm going to just fan out and I'm just going to block you. And that's going to buy me 3 turns roughly of scoring that primary on my natural to get my tanks have probably progressed at this point to be able to, be out there as well and just be able to shoot across. Because if you haven't done anything to stop me or brought anything for me to shoot, I'm just probably going to rotate my tanks to go towards the middle of the board and shoot towards your natural anyway from a different angle if I really, really need to. Yeah, it's trying to just keep those layers to push and hold that natural that I think are so important, and being able to just establish that dominance as early as you can to where you can kind of have control of that middle lane that goes all the way across no man's land.
Yeah, no, that's some great thoughts, and you can apply that to any army, right? Like that you need to have the tools to be able to execute a similar game plan. If you have a horde army, or even if you have a more specialty army, you do have to have a plan to control that objective, whether that be screening, whether that just be a big obnoxious OC brick that you're going to sit on there and be like, okay, you're never going to out OC me. So let's say plague bearers, right? They're incredibly tough. Maybe they have stealth. Maybe, you can give them lone up. All those things allow you to maintain that objective, and that's the best part about 40k is like, how are you going to solve that problem? And hopefully videos like this help you identify what you're going to do. But Lane, that was a great part of that deployment. But what about this area right here? If we talk about areas that like we need to access, how do you feel about that pocket right behind the middle L, or sorry, the middle 7x10?
Yeah, so usually I am trying to, for me, like fit kind of one tank or something that I need to be fairly flexible there. And then it is trying to put things onto that terrain piece that are infantry that can hopefully either scout up and get all the way into it. Some of my Bulgrin, for instance, something that I need to kind of just be mid screening. I'm just trying to pack as many resources into that middle point as I can. It's so easy to go help your natural. It's so easy to go defend the middle. So I'm basically just trying to put anything there that I feel like, and honestly, if I can cram enough of my normal slow units in there, I won't put a scout unit there even, because I'm going to be trying to put a scout unit below it in where you had that drawn to hopefully go have one turn of denial. But you're just really trying to make sure you are safe from shooting, which is fairly easy to do behind there. And then you are just trying to get as many infantry pieces that can just bust through that wall, go screen, go kill something, go deny, and you're just really trying to, whatever your game plan is, that's such a pivotal terrain piece, and that's your just like main operating, that's your base of operations, is that ruin.
No, absolutely. And unfortunately, you're going to have to use it, because this space right back here, I would consider almost dead space, right? Like you're going to screen out with whatever you have holding your home. There is an option to put something here so you can threaten this channel, right? All the way down. Reasonable. I'll be okay with that. If you put like a Lancer or a Ballistic Dread or like a long range shooting platform there, I'm okay with that. But you're running out of space pretty quick. But I will say this area right here is relatively safe, right? Because we have this corner that cuts off the majority of the shooting lanes as long as we're attentive towards what actually can happen and what our opponent's capable of doing. That is a space that we can take advantage of, right? So for me, most recently playing Death Guard, right? My rhinos are going there. My drones are going there because I want them as close to the front line as possible, especially those rhinos, because I will say this is probably one of my favorite staging areas to use on this layout after turn one, because I want to park a rhino right there off the terrain objective, using that corner to protect them from any shooting. And if they do, they have to come all the way around and they have to get in this space where I can really punish anything that comes out to kill a rhino, right? So that is a great staging area. It is a little bit more aggressive, and you have to be attentive towards the lanes that your opponents can actually shoot through. But if you do pay attention to those things, that is a spot you can take advantage of. But overall, you will feel it for some of these heavier drop armies that you run out of space on here really quick, because even though Lane and I said it, that this space is okay, it's not super safe, right? There is a line here, right, to go towards things. So you cannot go too deep with how far back you deploy things. Because you will get shot. It's the same thing with over here, right? Like this space is the same threat, right? There is a line here to actually get after something that you put too far back. And there's some armies that can really punish you for that. So, man, you are right. This is a shooting army's like dream. They are licking their chops every time they see something like this. And it can be very hard for you to deal with.
Yeah, I think you had a good point. Like maybe a Lancer or a Ballistus. I usually do try to have one Dorn commander starting around my home. That's just, I use that terrain piece. I have the ability to go +3 to move 13 plus an advance of D6. I usually like to I want to be towed on, but when we're doing deployment, and this is one of the major things of talking to your opponent and really like establishing intent, like I'm going to be on that terrain piece so I can be as far forward as I can, but we've established where I am safe from that shooting lane. so that if I can turn 1, I'm just going to yeet that thing all the way up and make it into that pocket on the bottom side, so I have a resource that is super threatening. And I think, if you have a piece like that, you can get away with having something there. Otherwise, I've also had decent luck starting where Phil was talking about, behind the U ruin, and you can also yeet vehicles across that gap. Again, like he was saying, there is that little bit of a shooting lane where if they really want to come out onto their natural, basically they can see up between. But you got to have some way to get things there, and really trying to figure out how you as a player are, because you have to. If you do not get anything to go contest or be able to threaten your opponent's natural, you better be able to hold on to your own, because it's going to be a tough game, because you got to have something. But yeah, I think that would be the one thing, is just, as we're talking here, make sure you have something that can hopefully get there, whether it's from speed, whether it's a rapid ingress threat, something that can just kind of hop into that pocket, especially with deep strike. You got to have something.
Yeah, I mean, this layout just in general, if you're not running infiltrate, you will get punished for it. If you're not running scout, it's gonna hurt, and your army may just be behind because of those things not being in your army list. So definitely a huge part of the game, and even more so on this layout. But yeah, you ready to move on to the next deployment?
Yeah, I think we knocked out the hardest one. Let's do the 2 easy ones now, because that one has so much more extra things to worry about than either of these two.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one is Crucible Battle. We already said it, but this one is even more punishing, because it puts you that much closer towards your opponent's natural and how much space we have. And yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of the same trends that we saw before, right? We still want to probably stack things in this pocket. We can't be up here unless we have an infiltrating unit, which is a little tough, right? Some armies definitely want to be up in there early, especially if they can control that space, but without infiltrate, you're going to suffer. I can start a unit pretty much right here, and depending on what my opponent has, be relatively safe, because a lot of the units, even if they start on this edge, they have to get all the way around to even stand a chance of getting an angle down into those starting units. So as long as you have an understanding of what your opponent's capable of doing, and you've asked those questions of like how far they can move, and you measure it out, and you verify with your opponent, hey, I'm measuring this at whatever 16 inches. You told me that's how far they can move. Do you agree that they can't get a line? So that way you don't get to the point of they move and it's like, actually, I can get a line. That's not how this works, right? Like, I'm asking you, I want you to agree or tell me I'm wrong. That way I can adjust. But we need to have the same information, and it's really important that we do so. This home objective, same thing. Space here stinks. It's not super effective. It's super far back, even more so now on this layout. So it's like, okay, well, what are you putting back there? Are you putting a Lehman Russ, like, or Rogodorn, like Lane's saying? Are you going to put a Lancer? Because you can still threaten those super long alleys, and we can still threaten the middle of the board, which is, once again, just a freaking shooting gallery.
Yeah. This one, I don't know. I think one of the main takeaways, I would say, just from a game plan standpoint, is the main 2 options are, am I basically going to turn my opponent's natural into mine? Are you just going to try to turn the board sideways to where it's just the short board edges, or I guess the long board edges, and it's a short battlefield, and just really try to push that bottom edge or the top edge? Or are you going to go back to the classic way of holding and just try to really turn it and make sure it stays that way, at least for a while? If you are planning to do that second option, you still need the resources to deny your opponent, because it's going to take you an extra turn to like get around that corner, to really get out into that shooting lane and really establish that same amount of dominance. So expecting to do that as like your overall game plan, I would just say set those expectations back a turn, because if you commit too hard to trying to secure your natural, you need to be ready to trade for a turn or 2, because it's just going to take you so long to chew through how easy it is for them to just keep throwing chaff at you with the way this deployment zone is set up.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, there are a lot of armies that can throw 20 OC or 10 OC or 6 OC onto an objective and say, okay, well, I don't care about killing you. I'm just going to deny you for a round. And they can stage from this location here, right? Because this object or this piece of terrain is an L facing away from you, right? You can't sit there, but your opponent can, and they can be incredibly protected from you. And you are not going to be incredibly protected from them because they can stage in this area. And if we talk about the same thing on the opposite side, you going here or here is just exposed, right? Like we already talked about this firing lane. It is so bad for certain armies. And if you don't have lone op and you don't have stealth, you are just going to get punished for sitting out on that objective. And then also, as Lane was saying, it's very easy for your opponent to sit back in this perfect pocket and just throw things on your natural. And you are just going to struggle all game. So I would say, personally, if I'm watching my opponent deploy and I watch them put a unit here and a unit here and a unit here, and maybe they put an infiltrating unit right here, right? I'm already thinking they are planning to just swamp me and pressure my natural and trade often, and I either have to have something that is so incredibly tough and resilient and high OC there that I'm going to be able to hold it no matter what, which if you have a unit like that, great, why don't you let me know, because I don't think there's anything in 40k that could deal one damage like that and have high OC like that consistently without just dying, because I don't think anything's that tough. So you have to have a better game plan. And maybe that means you need to have a game plan of you staging right here, right, with infiltrate and putting units right here against this wall. Because if you don't get access to your objective, then you have to deny objective access to theirs. You cannot let them get away with just denying you over and over again, because then that's how we lose games of 40k.
Yeah, the only other real game plan I've seen used effectively is just the non-game. Your whole premise is you're going to just try to go deny each of those points every time they put something on. Because you still can stage very well from both sides to go hop on any of those objectives. And you can just say, I'm not going to start this trading war. I will not go stand on an objective and give up anything unless it denies you specifically. It might mean that you're not going to get much primary, but as long as you're using your resources, especially in a game where you probably have fewer, if you're the elite army, like that might be the best approach as a way to just say, okay, as much as I would like to hold a primary in this game, I know if I step onto any of these, they are so exposed that A, I'm just going to get shot to shit, or they just have access to something that's just going to out-OC me, and I'm not going to hold it anyway. So having that, self-awareness of that game state, just say, okay, cool, custodes, you can't just keep throwing things out into the mid-board in a lot of these games. You're going to be playing patient until turn 3, where you can have almost your entire army staged in their natural, the middle, and your own natural to just ready and go, okay, cool. We're just going to swamp the board. You're only going to get to deny me so many of these because you're probably starting to bleed resources. And I'm custodes. You literally can't have anybody who chews through, 15 wardens like they're nothing. So it might be one of those things where that's the approach. But really, those are the 3 play styles I would say you could approach the game.
Absolutely. So like a mission like Supply Drop, where these objectives are disappearing and the primary keeps getting worth more and more. Well, it gets really, really tough, really, really quick to hold these objectives. And if you push too early and try to hold midfield objectives too early, well, you're going to get to the end of the game and be like, oh, that one objective is now worth 15 points, or 2 objectives are worth 8 apiece. And it's like, well, I pushed too much too early and now I'm struggling at the end of the game.
Yeah. It is a tough layout. It can be so brutal to have a good game plan for, but that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. You got to do the turn 0 tactics, do the homework, and really look at your list and say, I'm going to a tournament this weekend. I know there's layout 2. How am I going to approach that layout specifically?
Correct. And we'll just give you a quick synopsis, right? Like the deployment areas are still the same, right? We still want to be in this pocket. We still are happy here. We're still happy behind this wall. We're still happy here. This is the only thing that changed, where I may, depending on the units that I have, be willing to deploy there, depending on how my opponent's deployed and depending how, the type of army that they have, right? I'm not putting a unit there against Tau because they are way too fast and they will just pick them up no matter what. But maybe like, I don't know, like Death Guard, right? Like if they're not putting drones here, or even if the drones are here, they only move 10 inches, right? Are they going to be able to get an angle on the things that we put out there if we stack it properly? Maybe not, but that's how that's why we measure those things out against Gladius Space Marines or Ironstorm or even Chaos Knights, right? Like the big knights only move 10 inches. So there is worlds, and this is what I did against my most recent game in the Chaos Knights, right? That is an area that I can access as long as you measure it out and as long as you're cognizant of what can actually shoot you and what can't. So yeah, I think this deployment is very similar, but as you said very accurately, Lane, we're going to see lower and lower primaries on these layouts, layout 2 specifically, because of that reason.
Nowhere is safe.
No, absolutely not. All right, last one.
Let's do it.
Search and destroy,
Initial thoughts. Yeah, what are your initial thoughts when you're like search and destroy layout 2?
So there's probably not an army that I have currently that doesn't just salivate at the chance that you will allow me to put like a rhino right here. Like 10-man plague marines in a rhino, super safe, in the pocket, just being like, okay, you're never going to kill me. Like turn 1, you're not getting to me. And I am in a probably one of the best positions in the game to go after the middle if I need to, go after the natural if I need to. It is obnoxious. So like I had a game this weekend into Chaos Knights where that's what I did. It was on Search and Destroy. I put a rhino right there with 10-man plague marines. A lancer came out here to kill some stuff, and another knight came out here. Chaos Knight came out here to kill some stuff, and these 10-man plague marines just hopped out, shot the crap out of one with some helps from some heavy blight launcher drones, charged in, killed the other in combat. Some Death Shroud Terminators came in, killed another one, and it's just like, it was like the perfect staging area, and you give it to me for free. I don't have to infiltrate. I don't have to do anything. Gosh, there are some armies that can just lock down that part of the board because you allow me to put it in there for deployment.
Yeah, I do think this is like one of the biggest like flip the scripts of what we were just talking about, like just shooting lanes delight, all this galore. You can stack so many melee units so close to the center of the board on this layout on Search and Destroy, and it's insane how much you can pack in there. Like, it's still, once the game progresses, if you can get your, if you don't just get swamped by your opponent, if they don't have super fast melee that can just run across no man's land instantly, or at least you have good enough screening to buy you that time, you can still make it very good for your shooting army, but you better have plans for how the heck you're going to make it to that point in the game if you come across that army, because it's so brutal with how much you can just pack between the U and then, that little that's made out of the small ruin and the big ruin there in the midboard. Like, you have so much pressure that you can apply.
Yeah, it is incredibly tough, right? This objective, if this would be Green's natural, right? Just in terms of what they can get to and easiest thing that they have access to. This is so exposed, right? Like it is incredibly exposed, but it is hard to get a shooting lane onto it because you do have to expose yourself quite a bit to get down to the opposite natural, or you have to come all the way across, right? To get full view of that natural. Both of them are tough. If you look on this deployment zone, you can see that the thickness of the wall is meant to stop you from holding that objective on the other side. So it's like, okay, so well, potentially I'm not holding this objective on the other side of the wall, which means I have to be out on that objective, which means I am exposing a unit. And that's even tougher if I don't have sticky, or I don't have lone op, or I don't have the capabilities of a high OC durable unit, right? Like that objective is getting flipped all the time because, as we talked about, right? Like what is your opponent doing? They are staging. If they are doing it correctly, they're staging right here, and right here, and right here. And you are just sending things out onto this exposed objective to just trade and deny.
Yeah, and I've played on some terrain layouts or terrain sets where the walls are super thin, and you can put stuff behind the wall and be on that objective. But guess what? It's 3 models. It means nothing. It's not enough OC to hide and hold it. Like, okay, cool. If I have guardsmen, it's 6 OC. Like, that's good. But it's still not that hard to deny. It's really not. I have to be up against the wall. You can charge me and fight me through it. Like, you're going to deny me if you really want to. Yeah. It's just... One of the things I've even tried to really do is I focus a lot less on really trying to hold the primary. Again, we're going back to the denial. But what I'm trying to do with my screens is I'm trying to just send them out. Because the staging areas, like you talked about in that first video, are so good. They're so aggressive and strong. You can really get pretty close to your opponent. I'm yeeting my stuff out there to try to screen your next wave, and I'll shoot the stuff that's out in the open right now. I'm trying to stop your next wave from getting onto stuff and try to get more of the board control on this layout because, again, all those no man's land objectives are so exposed. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to potentially win just the trading war and the positioning war and just try to take up as much space as I can. So the hopes are in the future, I've bought enough space that it's like, well, I now have something that I can sit on there, that I have blocked you out with a screen that you cannot deny me for once, and
Yeah.
that's, I don't know, I find that to be one of the best ways to go about this layout as a shooting army, at least.
Absolutely. So what Lane means by that is like, let's say we have a big tough unit of Bulgrin here, or whatever the case is, and we send them across because on our opponent's turn, they've come up and taken this objective from us, right? They've packed it with a bunch of OC, whatever the case. Even if we have things behind this wall, they've packed it. These Bulgrin come out, but instead of going after the unit on this objective, they're going out to the unit that's staged up, ready to go behind this terrain, behind this wall. And they're just thinking, okay, I just want to tie this unit up. I want to provide a roadblock that doesn't allow my opponent to send this staging unit onto this objective. And then Lane's next thought is, okay, well, how do I get rid of this unit on that has now out OC'd me? Well, I have great firing lanes, right? Like I can get after this objective with my Rogaldorns in a position where they don't actually have to poke and trade, right? They are behind terrain, they are behind walls. They can kill the thing that's out on the objective, which Rogaldorns, there's very few things that they don't kill. And now we've set it up where I've killed the unit on the objective. I've tied up or potentially killed the unit that is ready to go into that objective next. And I've created a slight road bump where it's like, okay, well, you do have to deal with this and it's not going to be as easy, or I have denied fully your next wave going out to my natural. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that was a perfect example of kind of what the thought process is, of just because it is so easy to stage and deny that, like, you have to be thinking of your next turn, not the current one, if you're gonna succeed in 40k in general. But in this scenario specifically, it's just winning the board state is so important on this layout and this deployment especially.
Yeah, layout 2, search and destroy. You are right. It definitely flips the script. There are some combat armies that just like suddenly flip on you. Like, I don't want to see Space Wolves on this. That would be terrifying.
Yeah, not fun at all. Yeah, my basic principle as just a shooting army is like, I'm just gonna try to set a front line, and like if you don't have any shooting, I'm like, that's almost the best case scenario. If you have both, then it becomes a problem that are actually good. But like, I just need to set out one screen and be like, all right, come just hit me with something and start this battle off, because I need to get you using your resources so that I can burn through them and hopefully just get my tanks out onto some primary by the end of the game, because it is tough to deal with fast melee on that freaking map. Ugh.
Yeah, incredibly tough. But we've gone over 3 layouts and 3 deployment types for those 3 layouts. Those were all the recommended ones. So once again, I'll repeat this for maybe people that are watching for the first time. I would not personally deviate from the recommended layouts, right? You have a lot of options, you have a lot of combinations. I would just stick with those because the game is balanced in that way. Whether you're playing competitively or just for fun with your buddies, there's a lot of information here that hopefully is going to help you be a better player and play more fun games of 40K.
Yeah, I'm super excited to keep going down with this series. I've been really enjoying a lot of the feedback we've gotten so far. Thank you all for subscribing. Again, we can't ever thank you guys enough. It's been great seeing, the channel double in size just this week. Share with your friends. We're going to double it again this week. Why not? We'll just keep it rolling. Yeah, it's been great. Any final thoughts on layout 2?
Nope. I think overall, if you see this layout, right, in a that you're going to play or in a tournament you have coming up and you haven't taking considerations towards what shooting assets you have, you better, one, think about what shooting assets you actually have in the range that they are, right? If it's 24 inch and that's your max range, you're going to have to come up with a pretty concrete game plan because there are some armies that are going to really punish you for that because they won't have to engage you in any kind of close state and it's going to really hurt you. So you need to either come up with a great game plan if you're a combat army, and maybe that's that trading aspect that we talked about of just like being hyper fast, getting into these great staging areas and going out and trading, or you need to put some shooting assets in there. That means that you don't have to put a physical asset out there to trade with. Lane said it already, Custodes is a perfect example. If you're not running Caladiuses, that means one, either you need a bunch of Witch Seekers and Prosecutors, or you're putting Wardens out there to trade, and then they're just getting shot. And especially in Lions, you don't want your Wardens to get shot. I will take combat because I have Fight on Death, I can interrupt, I have for Feel No Pain, but if I let my opponent shoot me and then charge me, most likely I'm losing that unit of Wardens for not what I want, right? So there are some armies that you have to be like so careful with, especially on this layout, especially in some of these deployment types. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully there's a lot of great information here. If you have any questions or feedback or whatever, we have a Discord. Link is in the YouTube channel. Myself and Lane are all over the comments, so go ahead and feel free to throw one in there if this helped you, or you want to see more, or you can't stand the sound of our voice, I guess throw that in there as well. It will hurt Lane and mine's feelings, but we will take the feedback with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's been great getting to interact with all of you. Can't wait for more of it, and can't wait for more awesome videos. We're going to be bringing on a lot more guests here in the short future, so super excited for that. They're going to share some great knowledge with y'all, and in the meantime, do not forget that victory isn't given, it's forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercraft.